So we looked at processing objects and landscapes, but processing portraits is a completely different animal. So we're going to look at a couple of videos. This first video, we're going to do some quick dirty edits on 2 portraits, and then in the second video we're going to get a little bit more in depth with it, so I suggest watching both videos. We're going to start with this image here, because I think one thing that we need to remember when we're doing portraits, if we're doing like classic people portraits where we want the person to be the main part of the image, that we need to keep in mind that they need to be bright, they need to be vibrant, they need to be what brings people to look at them as opposed to other parts of the frame. So in this image, for example, we're always talking about how the brightest part of the frame is where your eye goes first. Obviously, the brightest part of the frame is the blown out sky. Now, we want to bring attention to our couple here, so we can do a few things. And I'm going to just do some quick edits on this just to show you what you can do with portraits. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring up the exposure just slightly, mainly because of them. One thing that I do want to do is I want to make sure that we see them more than anything else. So first thing, I'm going to go ahead and adjust the white balance. I don't like that at all. So as you can see, this does not work all the time. So I'm going to do it manually. They should be quite warm, I think, and more on the magenta side. Great. Now, I think that they could use a little bit more brightness. This was not well shot really, because they're both, he's very much out of focus, and that's mostly because this was shot at f1.2, which is definitely too narrow for 2 people together. So that's something to keep in mind as well, but the cool thing is that we can adjust for it to clean it up a little bit. Now, the big thing with people is the skin tone. So if you remember in the last video, I mentioned that you can do a lot with luminance here. Now, let's say that you're going to be editing a whole group of portraits from one session. You might have created a color and a theme that you like, and then you would save it as a preset over here that you could pop on all of them, and then you can do some minor adjustments. So I just wanted to kind of show you, I mean, these are some really bad presets that I downloaded just to test out. As you can see, I feel like they're all quite terrible. These are some adjustment ones that I've made myself to try to mimic certain film stocks. But let's look at this, because I don't like this at all, and the big thing it does is it makes them quite muddy. So if let's say I actually liked all the other tones around it. I don't, but let's say I did. But their skin tone became a mess because of it. That's when I would come down here to my luminance. I can lift the luminance on their skin just to kind of fill that back in, make it a little bit more natural. And I think it's just over like done, so I can pull that down. But luminance is your big skin saver. The other thing it does is if for whatever reason, let's say again, I'm just going to put this away, and I'm just going to reset this. Settings, reset. You can also click reset down here. And I'm just going to put a different preset on here just to show you. Now in this case, the skin became way too blown out. So I can go ahead and pull it back by doing the opposite. By going down, I am filling in the skin tone and recovering the skin tone with my luminance. Okay, so with people, I just wanted to show you this really quickly because that's a really good example of being able to recover things like that. Now there's some other stuff going on. There's lots of fringing. I don't really like the colors and so on and so forth, but the important thing is for you guys to see that we can recover skin tone using our luminance slider. Let's look at a more traditional headshot here. So this is a much better shot. It's more in focus. This was shot at f2, close up, as you can see. And we talked about lighting. I just want to show you. You can tell that it was shot with an octabox here because the catch light in her eye reflects that. And she's also holding a reflector down below like in the previous video. So there's a lot that we can do here. If this were a full edit, and I'm not going to do a complete full edit on this, things that I would want to adjust for are things like the hair. The wrinkles I might lighten a little bit only because she asked. She is an actress and she wants to just kind of clean that up a little bit. And then she specifically asked me to remove her mole. Now, one thing I can do first is I can just do my basic color corrections and edits. I actually feel like the white balance is quite nice on this, but maybe I want to warm it up a little bit. And then the green is quite green. So maybe I want to subdue that a little bit so as not to take away from her. So I can do that with my hue. Maybe just shift it a little bit more. I can go more green and I think that's a little distracting, or I can go more yellow and then I can just kind of maybe pull it down a little bit so it's a less distracting. And I can also lighten it up a little bit so the whole thing is lighter. Other things I can do, and you're gonna see this in the next video, I'm gonna go into more of this, but some spot editing with the teeth and so forth. But for this, let's look at the skin tone again. So like I said, I feel like the colors are quite good on this, and I'm not going to adjust them too much because it's a traditional headshot. But if I wanted to brighten her skin a little bit, I'm going into luminance, I'm selecting my picker, I'm picking a pretty neutral part of her face, and I'm just pulling it up a little bit just to bring some brightness from behind the skin. You don't want to go too far. You go too far, you lose all skin texture. We don't want to do that, but maybe just a little bit just to bring up some of that. Now, like I said, she had asked me to remove her mole, and she had asked me to soften some wrinkles here. So I can do some of that in here. Let's look at the mole first. I have a mole myself. I understand the want and desire to get rid of it sometimes. So we have a few different options here. I'm gonna just show you the remove tool first. So if I click on it and I click remove, it's using the generative AI to fill it in. We saw this in the previous video. I think this is a little overkill for a tiny little mole. Let me show you what else we can do. I would actually instinctively go for the heal tool. So first thing I'm doing is I'm holding down the option key and I'm clicking to grab a little bit of a sample spot, and then I'm painting over the mole. For some reason it is not choosing my spot, so I can just move it around a little bit. I can then also move the target, and I can change the size and the feathering on that. So if I didn't get it all, I can just do it again. For some reason it's pulling from Lord knows where. Where is it pulling from? Her cheek. Let's pull it back down here. Okay, and we're gonna zoom out. Let's come out of this just so we can see it. So it's all gone, mole all gone. There might be some like remnants of it there. Lightroom is quite good at this. You can get even more specific in Photoshop. So with the wrinkles, I'm actually going to do this in Photoshop, and I want to show you a couple other little tricks that we can do in Photoshop as well. If I did have red eye, I want to just show you what that looks like. I don't, but if I did, I would just click and it would remove it, but it's not seeing any. So let's look at though what I can do in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just right click on this page, the picture, and I'm going to edit in Adobe Photoshop, and it's going to open that up for me. Okay, so it has opened up in Photoshop for me. One thing I want to do first is I want to look at these wrinkles that she had mentioned. They're quite small and quite subtle, but she would like me to make them even more subtle. So here we go. So what I'm going to do is I am going to work with a couple different tools. You have lots of options here, especially now with the way things are with Photoshop. There's been a lot of updates. So you have your spot healing tool, you have your selection tools. Those are a nice way to do it. You have your clone tools. That's not great for this, but you have it for other stuff as well. And you have your healing brush tool is very good for this. I'm going to use my healing brush tool. I'm just going to make it a little bigger. Okay, and like before, I am going to hold down Option and click on the screen here. Now you'll notice I'm on a blank layer. This is on purpose so I don't disrupt the initial photo, the original photo. But important here is that I have sampling current and below. That means it's pulling information from the layer I'm on and anyone below it. If I have it on current layer, it's not going to find anything because this current layer is empty. If I do all layers, it would pull things from layers above it as well. I tend to stick with current and below. It keeps it a little bit clearer in my mind where I'm actually sampling from. So, hold down Option and click. I am choosing skin that is very, very, very close to the skin that I am trying to cover. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint over the wrinkles. Okay, and you see it's a little bit messy right now. This is a dirty edit, but I'm just going to paint over the wrinkles. Now what I can do is if I want this, let's just look at this before and after. There are the wrinkles, there they are not. It's a little bit strong, right? It's a little obvious. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lower the opacity. So it covers it in a little bit. The wrinkles are still there. We are human. We have wrinkles. She smiles a lot. It's all part of it. So we don't want to get rid of them entirely. We're just softening them up. Okay. Similar tools that you have for that. Let me just show you the spot healing brush tool. I'm going to just do a new layer. And with that one, I'm just going to draw over it and you see it pulls it out itself automatically. I'm not actually sampling myself. It's just pulling from what's around it. It works quite well, but sometimes it can start to look a little off. But again, lowering your opacity, and you can even add a little Gaussian blur, which helps to soften any lines that you made as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and just show you before and after. Now she doesn't really have any, but some people will have some dark circles under the eyes. A fun tool, easy tool for that is actually using our dodge and burn tools. This will go on forever, so just keep this in mind that when you get into deeper portrait editing, you're going to use the dodge and burn tools quite a bit. Dodge lightens, burn darkens is basically the idea. So I want to show you the dodge tool on the eyes, because one thing that people like to do is they like to have their eyes nice and bright. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to duplicate my layer here. And I'm just going to paint right on that duplicated layer. The reason I duplicated the layer is so that I don't have any destructive editing on my original photo. So I'm going to, every time I click over it, it does it a little bit more. I'm going intense because I want you guys to see what we can do with that. That's absolutely crazy, right? Okay, before and after. So we have a couple options. We could lower the opacity and that still adds some of the brightness. We can also change our blend mode. Soft light tends to work, but right now remember we have the entire image saved here. So it's doing it to the entire image. So we're not going to work with that right now. We're just going to lower the opacity. Great, so we have a little bit of brighter eyes there. Now the other thing that people often ask for is their teeth. They want to see their teeth nice and white, America style. So again, you have some options with this as well. We can go ahead and use our dodge tool to lighten them up. We could also do an adjustment layer, and we can actually go ahead and choose our color balance or hue and saturation, for example. And I can go and I can say my yellows, I want my yellows gone and I want them bright. You might have to play around with this a little bit with reds and such as well. And again, I'm still on this one layer, so you're not seeing it as much because the what's it called? The opacity is quite low right now. So if I turn my opacity up, you see those teeth are like gone, right? If I add a layer mask, and I'm gonna just invert it there, I can then paint that whiteness back on. You have to be careful with this because you see, because I did it like that, I'm getting this black and white look here. So there are other, you want to be careful with it. You want to go slowly. I actually prefer using the dodge tool for this as opposed to that, but you do have multiple options for that. So those are just a couple of ways that you can kind of clean up some images in Photoshop, some portraits, the eyes, the teeth, and the wrinkles. So if I had shut the wrinkles off, there we go. And you want to make sure that you do it evenly so it's on both sides. The bane of mine and a lot of photographers' existence here are these flyaway hairs. It's gotten much better, I will say, especially because of all the built-in new tools here. But there's not really a super easy way to do it. The best way that I have found is using the spot healing tool and literally making it really small and drawing on the hair to remove the hair. There are other ways you can do this, but this works quite well if you are meticulous about it. It's probably the cleanest that you can do it. If you are doing like proper portraits, like headshots, you are going to want to clean up any flyaways that present themselves. I would suggest, paying attention on set when you're doing it to try to mitigate it, but people are human and their hair moves, so there's little you can do about that. When I am done with any edits in here, what I can do then is if I just save it, it will bring it back into Lightroom with these new edits as a copy, and I can continue doing Lightroom edits on there. So if I go back into Lightroom, you'll see I have two versions of it. And you can see I only made some subtle changes, but you can see the teeth and the wrinkles have disappeared. And that's it. There's going to be some more. You're going to see a different video that will show this a little bit more in depth, but that's just a quick overview. I don't know how quick it actually was, but a quick overview of some ways that you can edit portraits.